Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite features in Fundly CRM in the reporting tool. We're going to talk about the interactive HTML viewer. This is actually a really little known feature of the system, and it's actually one of the most powerful. The interactive HTML viewer allows you to filter and sort and apply formatting to reports while you're viewing the report. So you don't have to go into edit and make changes to the report. You can sort of filter and format it on the fly. This is great when you've got a report and you want to look at the data a couple different ways and you don't want to have to go into the report, edit it each time, and rerun it. You can just sort of filter and change what you're seeing right on the screen dynamically. This is also an incredibly powerful feature for when you're in a meeting perhaps, for example with your board or executive staff or management staff, and you're all looking at this report together. Maybe you're projecting it onto a screen and everybody's kind of looking at it on the screen, and as people ask questions or you want to look at the data slightly differently throughout this meeting, you can filter it on the fly. So that you don't again have to go into edit and then wait for the report to run. So how do we use this tool? So we're going to go from the main menu, we're going to go into our enhanced reports, and we're going to work with an existing enhanced report that I've already created. This is a basic donation report, but you can use the interactive HTML viewer for any report that you run in HTML. So it could be a volunteer report in Connect, it can be membership report, an event registration report, donations, contacts, anything you want. The key to using the interactive HTML viewer is that you must run the report in HTML format. So here I've got a report. This is the report that we're going to be working with today. From the index screen, from the execute drop-down, you want to click this drop-down and you want to execute as HTML. This is most frequently when you're in the edit mode and you run the report and you just click run, the little forward arrow. It'll usually open it in HTML as well. So as we open this report in HTML, it's going to open it here on the screen for us, and then we're going to be able to interact with this report on the fly. Now this report, I haven't filtered. This report is just donations that are in my system for all time. And I've got some basic fields on here: contact name, their donor category, the date of their first gift that they've ever made to my organization, the donation amount, the donation date for all their various donations that each person has made, the fund, program, and campaign tagged to that donation as well. So now, while I'm here looking at this report on the screen, I can start interacting with it. The first thing I can do is I can open the Interactive HTML Viewer control panel, which I can do by clicking these 4 little dots that are over here on the side. If I click that, it opens up this control panel. Bet you didn't even know that was there. It's very overlooked. But this gives me some basic control over the way this report looks already. I can change the sort order. These are the sorts that I programmed into the report on the Sorts tab when I was editing in edit mode of the report. And so here are my various sort orders. I'm sorting my report first by contact ID and then by donation date. So you'll see, for instance, all of Bob's donations are together and they're going to be sorted by date chronologically, and then I'm going to come up to my next contact and all of her donations are sorted chronologically, etc. So I could change the sort order, for instance. I can interact with these. I could change one of these to sort the other way to be in descending order instead of ascending order. And I can also hide columns on my report. So I've got, these are my various columns here. I've got contact name, etc. Some of my columns, when I was in edit mode, I didn't put a name on the column in the column header, and so that's why it's showing up as column B, F, G, and H. And if I'm not sure what column these correspond to, if you come onto your report and you hover near the top of the screen, it actually will display those column names for you. That's by another feature you may not have realized was there. So if I'm going, okay, which is column F, because I forgot to name it when I was laying out the report, column F is the fund, I can actually go over here, uncheck it, and column F will be hidden. And so I could turn off any of these columns that I want to get rid of, and then I can very easily just turn them back on. So that's already two things that you can do to change the way this report looks and the information that you're seeing dynamically and on the fly. I have not changed the underlying structure of the report. Any changes that I make in the HTML viewer will not be saved. So this is just sort of live stuff that I'm doing with the report right now. Now, this is where it gets really exciting. I can right-click on any cell in this report and open up an interactive and contextual menu that will allow me to filter and apply formatting to this report. So let's start, for instance, with donation amount. The cell that you click on makes a difference because that is going to be your starting value. I can say to this report, change the color or formatting of any value in this column that is equal to, less than, greater than, or not equal to whichever value I click on. So if I clicked over here in building fund, for instance, I could now apply my formatting to all of them, only to records that are related to the building fund, or to records that are not the building fund, to any other fund that I may have set up. So when right-clicking, you first have to decide kind of what you want to filter on or want to format. So in this case, let's say if I just want to see every donation that is greater than $100, I want to apply my formatting. So I'm going to right-click, I bring up my contextual menu, and I can say greater than or equal to, and now I could bold those, italicize them, change the font size, change the alignment, or change the background color or the font color. So in this case, let's say red. I want to see all the donations that are greater than $100. And instantly, those are now changed to red, and I can see those on the report. And I can change this at any time. You know, I could change back. I could then also say apply to less than or equal values, and I could make those green. So now I've got all kinds of multiple formatting going on. That green's a little hard to read. We don't like that. Let's change that to something a little better. There we go, blue. So you can, you know, kind of filter in this way. And now I'm going to actually go back and apply to all, and I'm going to change everything back to black. And there we go, and click off of that. Now, I can also filter, for instance. So I could say to greater than or equal to, and you'll notice as soon as I change that, this little filter button pops up. If I click this, it is going to suppress or hide any values that are greater than or equal to $100, because that's what I clicked on. So in this case, if I just go ahead and click that, it's going to take a second. This is going to work. It's thinking, and then it's going to refresh, and now anything that's was greater than or equal to $100 shows up, and anything that was less than that is hidden on my report. So I can now dynamically start to filter my report on the fly. You can see any dynamic filters that you have applied because you will see them here. They get added to the control panel as conditional filters. And then if you want to undo that filter, if you want to show everything again, all you have to do is click the little red X. This will take a second. You'll see that it's working. It'll refresh your report, and it'll bring back all those values. So I could now filter on anything. I could filter by fund, program, campaign, donation amount, donor name, their donor category. This is a system-defined field where it computes the date of the last donation and then puts them into different categories. Or I could filter on the first gift date if I want to see everybody whose first gift date was in the last 6 months, for instance. Then I could filter on that if I wanted to, so I could see all my recent new donors. So this is pretty exciting, and this gives you a lot of flexibility, and it can be a real time saver, especially when you have a big report, 57 pages. Every time I go back in to edit it and rerun it, it takes time, and some of these reports can take a long time, and if you're trying to compare and contrast information, it becomes very tedious to do that through editing and hard coding the filters or the sorts or the formatting. So again, this is where your interactive HTML viewer can be a real time saver, it can be a lifesaver, and it can make working with data much easier. Now we can actually do a couple other things here as well. We're going to go back into edit mode now to work with this report. So I'm actually going to close this, and I'm going to go into edit my report. And again, we can get into the HTML mode to work with that interactive HTML viewer by running the report from Edit as well. We don't have to do it from the main screen. We can just click the Run Report button, and this should open it in HTML as well if that's the default report format. Now, while in Edit, we can also go to Report Options, Options menu, Report Viewer, and there's actually a whole bunch of things now we can do in here. We can change some of the general settings for our report viewer. We can show or hide the grid lines, and we can allow the ability to hide or show columns in the report viewer. We can also indicate whether or not we want this to act like a PDF or not. Now, we can also add dynamic filters to the report. Now keep in mind, these dynamic filters are things that will be applied after the report is run. These are not the same as the filters that you apply to the report on the Filters tab when you're creating the report. Right? So if I want to hard code some filters into this report, I would need to go here to the Filters tab. So for instance, let's say I only wanted to see donations made after 2016. Then I would need to hard code that here. Adding it to the report viewer means this report is going to pull all donations, and then I can filter them after the report is run to only show me 2016 and greater donations. But if I only want to limit the data I'm seeing up front or from the beginning, you do that on the Filters tab. So we'll go back here into our report viewer options. Going back to our filters, we can add filters now that we can manipulate the data by if we want. So I could, for instance, I could add fund, and I could add donation amount and donation date, and I'm also going to add campaign. So I could add as many filters. I could add 1, I could add 1,000,000, I could do whatever I want. For each of these filters, you now also are going to have a set of options. You can choose what type of filter this is. Single choice means it'll be a drop-down list and it'll let you pick one thing. So in this case, fund, it will present me a drop-down list with the name of all my funds that are available, that have been used in the donations, and I will be able to select one. Multi-choice will allow me to select more than one option, so I could filter by multiple funds at one time. Range slider and single slider don't really apply here, but donation amount and date, absolutely. Single slider means that you're going to get a slider. You're going to have the lowest value available in that field and the greatest value available in that field. For date field, that'll be my earliest donation to my date to my latest donation date. And as a single slider, it means I will be able to select one value. So I'll be able to select, if my dates go from January 2014 to today, I would be able to select an end date for that. So between January 2014 and certain date, I might say between January 2014 and the end of 2014, or the end of 2015, or the middle of 2016, or whatever I'm looking for. A range slider lets me select both the lower limit and the upper limit. So then I would be able to say not only just from January 2014, but I could actually bump up that lower limit and say only show me things from January 1st, 2016. And then I have a slider for the end date I'm searching for, and I can go 12/31/2016. So I could search in that way. You could think of single slider as greater than or less than as the value for a filter, and a range slider is between. Right? So range slider lets you pick two values. The single slider only lets you pick one value, either upper or lower limit. And again, the range sliders, the sliders really work best for things like dates and amount fields. They don't really work for like fund and campaign. It doesn't really make sense. But so I could, for instance, I'm going to make that a single choice. The donation amount, I'm going to make a single slider, and the date I will make a range slider so you can see all these different options, and then campaign I'll make that a single choice as well. I can make a multiple choice. There we go. Now we have 4 options. Now for each of these you can also set the default sort direction for the values that are presented in your drop down. So for instance, fund, do I want to see them alphabetically in ascending or descending order? Dates and amounts, do I want to see ascending, descending order, etc. when I'm selecting my filter values. For each one, you can also format the filter value. So this is a date field. I probably want it to show up as a date, so I want to tell it that's what this is. It's a date, and I can pick the date that will appear in my drop-down or my selection. So I could limit it, to just month and day or month and year or whatnot, and I can display how that's going to show. So again, for my donation amount, I'm going to tell it that that is currency, it's number, and I want to use the currency symbol, etc. So you can go in and tell it what these different fields are. Now the other thing is, do you want to initially display this filter on the interactive control panel? So do you want it available from the get-go as a default filter that you can interact with, or do you want it hidden and that you can add later? So I'm going to add fund, and I'm going to add the donation date as initial ones, and then you can also hard code your initial default value as well that can be overridden. And the other two I'm going to leave hidden so that you can see the difference between those. And then finally, under sorts, we can set our sort orders and manipulate any of the sort order stuff here that we need to. Once we're all done, we're going to click OK, and I'm going to save that. Now when I run the report, I'm going to have some filter options that were not available to me before. Now again, I can still right-click on any cell and filter that way, but adding these hard-coded, I don't want to say hard-coded, adding these filter tools on the interactive HTML viewer control panel gives you some more robust filtering options than just sort of right-clicking in here and filtering. So now if I open that control panel, ta-da, we've got these filter options, and the two I had picked to be here by default now show up. The donation fund, and again, this was a single drop down, so it appears here, and the date field I had picked as a dual slider or a range slider, so again I can now pick the upper and lower limits here, and you're going to notice it's going to automatically default on the fly here, start working, and it's going to filter based on what I'm telling it. So my earliest dates were actually 11/20/2014, and I actually changed this to 2015. Not sure why I didn't pick that up. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong column. That's why, over here. Donation date, that's my first gift date field. So here's my donation date field, and as you see, I got rid of, if I go back and put that, so my earliest date is February 2nd, 2014, and you're going to notice these dates. And there we go, it pulled back into the 2014 dates again. Now, the other two filter fields that I added in the report viewer options that I had said don't show them initially as defaults here, I can add those and get to those by clicking this little plus button, and it's going to bring up my other two that I had added but didn't have shown as by default, and I can just click on those and I can add those. And now here you can see this is a single selector, so again that's how you can't pick the upper and lower end, you can only pick kind of the lower range here for that particular one. And then my donation campaign I said was a multi-select, so I actually, now I don't have, you notice this automatically changed because I didn't have anything that met that donation amount and was a part of any of these other campaigns. Now I could select multiple campaigns, and then I'll be able to see those will show up over here in my campaign column. So that's the interactive HTML viewer, and as you can see, it's pretty powerful and awesome. I can still now go in here and I could right click and I could say apply to greater values, and I want those to be red, and then now everything over $100 is changed to red, and then I could filter, I could hide those other values if I wanted, or I can just go and change that, get that off of there if I wanted to. But this makes it easier to talk about the report, it makes it easier to compare and contrast and do it all on the fly without making changes. Now you can actually save these changes, this formatting change to your report that you do in the HTML viewer by clicking the save button. And you do, it's going to say, do you want to save it to your base report, or do you want to basically do a save as and make a copy of this report? And you can do either. And there you go, the interactive HTML viewer in a nutshell. We do have a tutorial on this in the support library, which you can access from the support menu. And there actually is a link to a more robust written tutorial provided by Exago on how to use the interactive HTML viewer and some of what the various options mean that are available. And there you go.